We are at part 2 of Dr. Kinsey's testimony. And I mean, it's like sledgehammer after sledgehammer. He can't get a break. He keeps getting hit. Now, before we continue, I just want to say a real heartfelt shout out to all the day ones. I really love you guys. I appreciate every one of y'all. I read like every comment, even if I'm not responding to every comment, because it's literally just not really possible for me to respond to everybody. I'm reading them all. And much love to all you guys, man. I appreciate you. And to all the haters, I appreciate you too, because I know I'm doing something right. I literally got some comments saying, stop cracking your knuckles so loud. Oh, you're drinking juice and you're smoking? That's it for me. Too unprofessional. I'm leaving. Like, bro, listen to me. When I do a 10-hour shift and I come home and make a video for y'all, hey, I might want to smoke a joint. Hey, I might drink some alcohol. But guess what? We're all here to have a good time. We're not a professional space. But anyway, let's get straight into this.
Now, let me ask you this. Excuse me. The second wound, the fatal wound that Paul suffered to his head, was that buckshot?
And keep in mind, when he got shot, apparently that's the motion he made. It was through his shoulder, into his jaw, and into his head, like some gnarly shit. Continuing.
Or was that birdshot?
The second wound was birdshot.
All right. And can you describe to the jury the difference between the composition of a buckshot round as it relates to the pellets and a birdshot?
Okay, and someone shout out you in the comments. You're like, the first shot wasn't birdshot. Thank you for correcting me, because that is a very necessary point that we had to understand, and he's about to go into.
Yes, sir, I can.
All right, please do that.
With buckshot, you've got a number of larger pellets, approximately 30, 36 caliber pellets, and you've got fewer of them. They're made for bringing down larger game. So in the typical double-aught buckshot, you're going to have 9 pellets. In your typical number 2, and it's called many things, you know, the typical person calls it birdshot, chill shot, steel shot, coated shot. I've heard it called many things, so I just typically call it bird.
I've never heard of coated shot before. Let's just call it bird shot, people, universally. Let's do that.
Bird shot. But in this particular shot, there's approximately 150 to 156 pellets in that dry lock shot shell. So that's the difference. With the buckshot, you've got fewer and they're larger, and with the bird shot, you've got many and they're greater. They're for bringing down winged animals, squirrels, rabbits, dove, quail, turkey, duck. I mean, just depending on the number shot, that's what that's for.
All right, and about how many approximately birdshot might be in an average shotgun shell?
The
Like
literature
8?
says that it's 156 in a dry lock. I cut one open and I only counted 150, but that may have been human error.
Bro, okay, let's just stop and point out the fact that he cut one open and counted each little bead. This guy is borderline obsessive, and I like it. Hold on, let me back it up. He smiles too. He prided himself off of counting of that.
I mean, just depending on the number shot, that's what that's for.
All right, and about how many approximately birdshot might be in an average shotgun shell?
The literature says that it's 156 in a dry lock. I cut one open and I only counted 150, but that may.
Look at that smile, bro. Look at that. He loves his job, bro. This is the definition of someone who loves their job.
Have been human error.
Around 150.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
In your expert opinion, when you have birdshot, is there a forensic value to collecting every single pellet, or can you explain those concepts to the jury when you're dealing with birdshot?
I always try to collect enough that the firearms examiner can weigh it, and he can have a good representative sample of what was used to cause this injury. With a projectile or a bullet, you have what's called lands and grooves, markings, rifling. Some people call it rifling, and it's caused from that.
Rifling causes the bullet to spin. It's almost like 007, James Bond. You know the intro, and it goes into the barrel of the gun and it has that curvature. That's rifling.
Projectile spinning as it goes down the barrel. You don't have that in a shotgun. And a pellet is so small that you probably couldn't find it if you could have it in a shotgun. So in my opinion, there's no forensic value as long as you have enough to determine what type of shot or what type of shell and the weight of it.
So basically, if it was another type of bullet, I guess the rifling would, it would tell them more about the gun that was used. Like, okay, it's marked from this type of barrel shot that was shot from. But since shotguns don't have any rifling, all you need to do, it makes things simple. All you need to do is collect enough pellets to know what shot was used. That's it. And that's what he clearly accomplished.
In your opinion, and you've talked about this, but was the shooter, when that fatal shot was fired, inside or outside of that door frame?
The second shot?
The second shot.
Yes, sir. It was outside the door frame.
All right. And where was that second shot shell located?
It was also located under the door.
All right. And is that still consistent with your opinion?
Absolutely.
And can you explain that to the jury, please?
Yes, sir. Like I mentioned earlier, the ejection port on a shotgun typically, now there are left-handed shotguns, but typically the majority of shotguns, the ejection port is on the right side.
On the right side.
So as long as that shooter had it at an angle and had that ejection port pointed toward the door, even just the least little bit, that would give plenty of opportunity for that shot shell to be ejected and go inside that door.
Yeah. I mean, it's common sense almost at the end of the day. People who don't understand guns, probably what he's doing, a little 5-minute 101 course, and you'll understand what's happening. He's aiming at him. He has it in this angle. He pulls the trigger, blows his head off. But at the same time, the shell flings that way. And if you've ever seen a gun shoot, the shells fling away pretty far. They can shoot to the right about 5, 6, 7 feet, depending on the strength of the gun. So it's very easy for the shell to have ended up in there.
All right. I know I just sent you back. I'm going to bring you back down. I'm sorry. Before we move on from Paul, I would, and if you could just use me as a mannequin, but can you sort of describe to me your conclusions about the positioning of Paul when he suffered that fatal head wound, and just how the trajectory of that wound and that shot as you've described and as supported by the evidence as you see it?
Can I describe it and demonstrate?
Yes, please.
So the jurors can see me. The second wound, as I mentioned, went in his arm and caused an injury here, a large exit, and then, of course, exit here.
I didn't know. Wait, but the second shot that killed him was birdshot. Y'all let me know. I didn't know that birdshot was that powerful. Even at close range, I thought, I thought you just wouldn't, die from birdshot, but apparently I'm wrong.
So it had to be.
See, this is why I need a shotgun, y'all. We need to understand these things. We need to learn these things.
Typically, with the kind of non-fatal wound Paul suffered to his chest and his arm, it's my belief that now his 5'8" frame is dipping or favoring that arm, because as you know, that's over 20-something entrances and exits. I believe it would have hurt him. I believe he would have been in pain. And I believe he would have been somewhat affected. And the reason I believe that is because I've got the knife.
Now look at him, guys. Now, honestly, look at him. There is not a single tear coming out. Look. Nothing. Now let's continue. I hope they hold this camera on him.
90-degree blood drops moving really, really slow. If he wasn't
closing his eyes tightly, getting nice and he's like having a little tantrum but not crying. Bro, look at the lady in the corner looking at him. I am telling you guys, there is something wrong with this guy. He honestly didn't care about them. He's not even crying. He's fake crying. Look at that shit.
Or if it hadn't affected him in some way, I believe his youthfulness would have allowed him to get out of there faster. But he's moving real slow to the door. So that's going to drop that angle just a couple inches, and I can demonstrate.
It's insane how accurate this guy is. I honestly feel like I don't even need to see what really happened. He made the story for us.
All right. And if we can make sure that juror can see?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
That woman went in,
Oh wow. Oh wow. Yeah. Oh wow. He's aggressive. He's like, bring your head this way, fool. Like, oh wow.
approximately right here.
Bro, I like how everybody laughed when I saw that shit. That's hilarious. Yo, but all I can say is Kinsey is into his shit. He didn't even realize he was that rough. He was just like, let me show y'all exactly how this happened. This is what happened.
It traveled in, and out in a straight line. In a straight line. Shot always goes in a straight line.
And then when you're pressing the dowel stick there, you're showing the trajectory of the wound, not implying that was a contact wound. Is that
No,
correct?
sir, I'm not. I'm not implying it's contact. I'm just showing the level of the wound.
All right. While I'm thinking about it,
Shout out the scribe guy in the corner. I noticed he's been here the whole trial. His hands must hurt. I can't imagine writing everything down. Like, that's next level typing.
the wound to Paul's chest, did it show evidence of stippling?
Yes, sir.
All right, and just very quickly,
What is stippling?
Commonly referred to as tattooing. It's particles and material that's in that shell that don't burn up because it's superheated at the time that the powder charge ignites. It doesn't explode. It ignites and burns rapidly. And that's unburnt particles of powder and other contents of that shell. They're hot, and when they hit the body, they cause stippling, or in the old days, they called it tattooing. And that's basically what it is. It works as an ink.
So you got hit with part of the shell and it just seared into him, basically. Oh.
Looking at this particular image, Paul's about 5 feet in the feed room when he suffers the first wound, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And then he moves towards the door, is that correct?
That is correct.
And suffers the second wound somewhere near the door frame on the inside of it.
Yes,
correct?
sir, with his shoulder just outside that door frame.
And when he suffers that second wound, what happens to Paul?
He falls immediately.
And where does he fall?
He falls outside the feed room.
All right, let's move on now, and let's talk a little bit, if we can, about the injuries to Maggie Murdaugh. And if you could, start out by reminding the jury of the injuries that she suffered, and then let's talk about your conclusions as to the manner and the order in which those were suffered.
Now for Maggie. Now remember, it was Paul first, so at the same time, she's probably hearing this commotion, is like, what the hell is going on? Starts going over there, gets closer, realizes it's her son. Imagine that's the last thing you hear about, or that's the last thing you see before he turns on you.
Yes, sir.
All right, so if you could just remind us again of those injuries, and if you could go ahead and describe them in the order that your expert opinion they were suffered.
Yes, sir. Miss Maggie Murdaugh suffered 3 non-fatal injuries from a firearm. One was through her wrist.
Non-fatal.
One was her left upper thigh above the knee.
Definitely not
One was
non-fatal.
at her abdomen here, and it exited somewhere around her kidneys.
Oh my God.
Now, I'm not that kind of doctor. I can't tell you all the damage it did inside, all those organs and things, but it ran a straight line through her body. This one on her left leg and this one on her midsection were approximately the same angle, and they were really, really close in distance. One had stippling that said that it was a foot closer than the other, but that would probably fit. This was either a total separate non-fatal wound, or it could have been a continuation of one of the 2 fatal wounds. Her fatal wounds were, she had an abrasion or a burn.
Damn, so he shot her 3 times without killing her. And then now we're going into the fatal shots. So she took, what, 5? Like, we'll find out.
On the left side of her abdomen, from the outside in, that bullet followed a straight path. It entered the end of her breast and did extensive damage to the end of her breast, entered her left jaw, side of her face area, and went into her brain. That's the first fatal injury. And it was immediate, and she dropped right where she was at. I saw no evidence that her body had been manipulated, moved, or rolled over. The second fatal injury was down into her head,
Oh, wow.
and it actually did what in the day.
Did he shoot her after she was down in the head? Holy crap. So the first shot hit her from here, went all the way up through her body, through her jaw, through her breasts, into her jaw, through her head. Like, they were both headshots. That's crazy.
They call a keyhole injury just from appearances. The entrance and exit in the top of her head were so close it made one big injury, and then it entered into her upper shoulders and went down into her body. That
Wow.
would have also been a fatal wound, but it was second. In my opinion, that one came second.
So that one came second to make sure she was down. Bang, she drops instantly. Well, he's been shooting at her a couple of times, so she's running, screaming. Bang, bang, bang. He hits her. She's hurt. She falls over, right? He hits her in that angle, hits through her body, into the top of her head. She's out. Then he walks up, shoots her on the ground. Cold-blooded. Like, it's like worse than a mafia movie. Man.
All right, let's talk about that a little bit more detail. Those first two wounds that you described, you believe those are the first two wounds she suffered?
Yes, sir, and possibly three. I can't tell you much about this because the arm could have been moving or it could have been here.
All right, well, let's talk about the thigh wound and the abdomen wound. Did you have any conclusions about the location of the shooter as those two wounds were suffered?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right, and explain that to the jury if you would, please.
Right there. All right. Left leg out a little bit.
Oh, he's thorough. He's like, no, yeah, okay. Like,
About here and here. Here and here.
bang, bang.
And in your opinion, were those two shots fired in fairly quick succession or around the same time?
I think it would have been really, really difficult to get a similar angle if they weren't. All the shooter had to do is raise the weapon or lower the weapon, and you're still on the same plane.
And did those wounds to the abdomen and to the thigh reflect the presence of stippling?
They did.
And what does that indicate to you about the distance between Maggie and the shooter when those wounds were suffered?
Really close.
I guess 4 or 5 feet.
Really close. Because, again, stippling dissipates as it's shot. That's all the shelling and all that other stuff, right? So if they're further out, it'll dissipate and only the projectile will make it. But obviously, there was stippling all over her, so he was close.
Close?
Yes, sir.
All right. And after those two wounds were suffered, and again, we'll put aside the wrist wound for a bit, what would have happened after that in your expert opinion?
In my opinion, at bare minimum, she would have been over. She would have been in pain. I believe sometime in close proximity, she fell to the ground. And that's when the first fatal wound was delivered.
What did I tell you, bro? I'm Detective Allen out here in these streets. What did I tell y'all? He hit her, bang, bang, fell over, then hit her in that fatal injury to her head. And that's, it's not good.
Would she have been prone on the ground or still somewhat raised above the ground or in a bent over position when that first fatal wound was suffered?
In my opinion, from the angle, she would have been on her knees and had at least one hand on the ground.
Those first two shots, well, let me ask you this. There were obviously 6 shell cases of 300 blackout that were used to murder Maggie Murdaugh found at the scene. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Explain to the jury, what conclusions, if any, can you draw about the location of those shell cases, if anything? Explain that to the jury a little bit.
Once again, just like with the shotgun, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I don't think there are many left-handed AR platforms. So generally speaking, the ejection port's going to be on the right side. I own 7. Some of them throw it.
I own 7. Don't run up on this man's house. Guess what? You will get shot and he will be free. I like this guy. He's like the cool uncle. Like if he was at the cookout, he's the uncle I'd be hanging out with for sure.
The shell casing a little bit forward. Some throw it a little bit back. Some throw it perfect 90 degrees to the ejection port. if they were always uniform where they come out, if you go target practice, you could place a bucket there and all your shell casings would drop in the bucket. You wouldn't have to bend over and pick up your shell cases. Unfortunately, that's not the real world. So I don't put a lot into that unless I have the actual weapon and we can test the weapon with the same ammunition and you can generally get an idea where that shell casing is going to go. So no, sir, I don't pay a lot of attention to it, and I definitely don't think the sequence of from one end to the other or from this end to this end means that's necessarily the movement of the shooter.
So the
All
shells
right,
mean nothing.
You said that when she suffered that first fatal wound, in your opinion, I mean, she would have been over and perhaps been on her hands and knees. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to get down on my hands and knees, and if you could come around here and kind of show me where the trajectory of that wound would have gone, the first wound that was fatal for Maggie Murdaugh. I guess you can come behind me.
Now, I like how professional these men are. They want Alex in the cell. Maybe not as much Kinsey. Kinsey is just there to do his thing. But the prosecutor, you can tell, he wants the picture to get put across. No status, no money can get you out of this. That's what he's trying to drive home right here. You're going to jail.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Make sure all the jurors can see now.
Right there.
Right there. Oh gosh, this looks interesting.
The
It's an
shooter
interesting
was right
sight.
here, approximately right here.
Oh wow.
All right, and show us the trajectory as it went through Maggie into her brain.
Yes. It burnt or grazed her stomach outside to inside, went through the end of her breast, into her jaw, and then into her brain.
Okay. Yeah. What would have been the effect on her once that shot was suffered?
She would have immediately
Instant
fell
death.
down with the front of her body.
All right.
And that is the position her arms were in the original crime scene photograph.
And while I'm down here so I don't have to get up again, tell me about the fatal shot and the positioning of the shooter as the evidence indicates to you.
The second shot was not as close, but it's
This is like a show. I like how he's so serious, and this man is chest down on the floor. Let me rewind that. He is so dead serious. I love it. Absolutely love it.
immediately fell down with the front of her body.
All right.
And that is
You can hear his voice echoing off of the floor. It's great. It's good.
the position her arms were in the original crime scene photograph.
And while I'm down here so I don't have to get up again, tell me about the fatal shot and the positioning of the shooter as the evidence indicates to you.
As the
Second
evidence
shot was
indicates
not
too.
as close, but it still wasn't a long distance. It was approximately here into the crown of the head.
Okay, so further, this all shows how premeditated and how evil this guy was. So Bam Bam drops on the floor, hands on the ground, trying to crawl away. Bam, shoots her from the stomach into her boobs, into the brain, dead. He walks around her to get a better headshot. Bam, which then just cracks everything open. The dude is, the more I watch this, the more I realize that he's really, like, it couldn't have been overnight. He really had to have been premeditated and thinking, like, one day I'm going to have to do something like this. One day.
And use the dowel stick to show that injury that Maggie suffered.
In, out, in that line.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, he's got good knees. He ran up there real quick. I thought he was going to take a minute, but he whoop, right up. My knees be popping. I don't know why. I don't know.
All right. The first shot, the first fatal shot, that would have immediately been fatal. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The second shot also would have been fatal had she still been living, but in your opinion, she was not at that point. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
She may have had a sign of life, but there was no movement. She was not capable of any movement at that time.
All right. Go ahead and have a seat for me. Of course, as soon as I say that to you, I'm sure probably going to have.
Look at him sniffling. Look at his eyes. Dry as a piece of paper. Look at his nose. No snot. Where's the handkerchief? Nowhere to be found.
Get back up.
Gray beard back there is ready, boy. You're looking at him. Looking down on him. Oh, yeah, he's so ready.
Let me talk about something else real quick before we
He's
come
pissed
back to
off.
this.
On Miss Maggie Murdaugh's left calf.
And putting it up on the screen. If you could tell me, first of all, what do we see here before we get to your analysis on this particular issue?
This is a general photograph of an impression on Miss Maggie Murdaugh's left calf.
Okay. And do we also see a wound on this picture?
You can see the exit wound from that thigh wound that I described earlier.
All right. And what, if anything, did you notice about or conclude from the sort of the blood pattern on the back of her thigh there?
She stood a little while. I can't tell you how much time, just like with Paul, but she was standing after she suffered that thigh wound because the blood is running down the leg and gravity always pulls it to the earth.
All right. And then, I sent you back there. I'm going to just bring you back on down. I'm sorry about that.
Come on down here, man. Get that exercise in.
If you would, and again, make sure you're out of the way of the jurors. Was there any sort of mark or any sort of mud mark on?
Again, I just want to point out, this guy wants, I don't know if it's for career. I don't know if he personally doesn't like Murdaugh. I honestly think maybe it's the first option, career boosting. He wants the jury to see every little thing. He's like, oh, hold on. Make sure that juror can see. Make sure he can see. Make sure they all can see this, because after they finish this presentation, there will be no doubt.
On the back of her leg?
Yes, sir, there was.
Bro.
All right, and point that out to the
Just
jury.
look at him, guy. Guys and girls, mainly girls, look at his eyes. Do you see tears? Comment down. Tell me yes for tears, no for no tears. I think hell no.
Please.
Right here, an unknown impression on her leg.
Okay. And did you engage in an analysis of that particular impression?
I did, yes, sir.
All right, you just stay there. I think it's probably easier than sending you back. I'm going to move to the next slide.
And again, all right, listen here, because a lot of you guys are saying like, oh, well, people process grief differently. Oh, this and that. Okay, fine. If he wasn't crying at all, I can see that. But it's the attempt to cry. That's what I'm seeing. It's the attempt to show emotion as opposed to being numb, as opposed to just not showing emotion at all, or maybe bawling your eyes out, one or the other. But him is like he's putting on this display of emotion that's not really working, that's not really selling. Just to clarify, you know what I mean?
And just tell me what this is, if you would, please.
That is the same impression, unknown impression. I've just cropped everything out so you can concentrate on the actual impression.
All right. Moving on to the third page of this exhibit. What is this?
This is a side-by-side all-terrain vehicle that was in close proximity to Miss Maggie Murdaugh's body, where her final spot where they located her, and this is in close proximity to where she was located.
All right, stand by for me real quick.
As footwear and tire tread or tire track examiners, we look at the actual tread pattern and design of that tire or that shoe. And there are a couple different conclusions you can come up with. We compare known and unknown. It's not like you see on TV where you take a picture of a shoe and feed it into a computer. Some people have footwear databases, but it still has to be examined by a human. There's no magic machine. If it is, I've never seen it. What we look at the dimensions of the tread pattern. We look at the shape, the sole, the outsole design, the tread design, the measurements, and we try to find class characteristics. That's shape, size, sometimes depth, or the physical properties included in that pattern. And then to make a complete identification, that's a class characteristic. That's saying there's an association, either this shoe or this tire could have made this unknown impression, or another one just like it could have made this unknown impression.
Now remember, the whole reason they're doing this is because I believe Alex Murdaugh used another truck that day. So they're trying to like compare it to the tire. And we're going to get into that later. I don't have much info on the vehicle he used, but yeah, you know, there's a lot of things that he kind of messed up on and slipped up on.
Here, and then it comes up. Now it's exaggerated a little bit in the drawing, but that's the best I could do with a stylus trying to get it there.
And are those very distinct patterns that you see in the mud that match up with that particular tire?
Yes, sir. Not so much the corner there, but these in here are. You can see a unique random characteristic here, and all that is a void pattern in the mud. You can also see it here. I mean, almost perfect. You can see one here where the yellow area is. You can see it here. It's right there.
All right, you're kind of doing a little mountain or a little hump. And expand on that with the jury. Why is that why is that significant to you?
Because that's not in the process of making the tire. That's because whoever drove that side by side last hit some dirt or some mud, and that is a pattern that's left in mud on the tire. And in my opinion, it transferred to Miss Maggie Murdaugh's calf.
Right.
And here it is, right here. And I've marked it there, but you can look at the one that's not marked, and you can also see it here.
All right, talking about this bottom impression, we've got a white arrow to that line right there. Explain that to the jury and what's significant in your analysis about that.
I marked that because unless you examine, unless you got really, really good eyesight, you might not even pick up on that. But here you've only got a partial line. The whole line didn't show through in the transfer of the mud or dirt or debris.
All right, y'all. So that was his testimony, basically destroying Alex Murdaugh bit by bit by bit. Now, defense will also talk to him, and, you know, they'll try to make him seem non-credible as usual, but, you know, we'll get into that later. I got a lot more videos to do, so cheers, everyone. I'm glad you came by. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. And, yeah, stay safe. I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Hold up real quick. I gotta shout you guys out for getting me up to 2K, right? 2K subscribers. I love you guys. Get me up to 3K. Make sure you tell your grandma, your auntie, your niece, your nephew, your cousin. Tell everybody. Hit that subscribe button. Love you guys.